In an age of skyrocketing divorce rates, is it really possible to make love last? Welcome to the Falling in Love Forever show with Doctors Barbara and Michael Grossman, the well-known relationship experts and best-selling authors of The Marriage Map book. Each week, they share the latest information to help you enjoy your romantic partnerships so you can fall in love forever. Here are your hosts, Doctors Barbara and Michael Grossman.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Grossman,
I'm Dr. Barbara Grossman.
and we are the authors of The Marriage Map, The Road to Transforming Your Marriage from Ordeal to Adventure. Today, we're going to talk about serial marriages. Serial marriages are pretty much inevitable in modern life. When Medicare was developed and Social Security, 1930s, the average lifespan was 60, and then you passed on. So they had no problem giving everybody Social Security at the age of 65 because most people were not alive after that or at that point. So the experience of married life was ending at 60 years old. A few hundred years ago, most people only lived to be in the 50s. So the experience of married life changed. Now we live way into our 80s. And so it's a very different kind of experience of married life. So the experience of serial marriages is so common because we have a long period of time. It used to be you get married when you're 20 and
Or younger.
or younger. And then when you're 40 something years old, your life's pretty much over. So now we have another 40 years.
And add to that there wasn't birth control. And so you had lots of children. A lot of them didn't survive. And so you wanted to have lots of children, and lots of children were inevitable. And you spent the majority of your adult life raising children.
So the experience of marriage has changed. So now we have the complexities of lots of opportunities and choices that we didn't have when we were living a few hundred years ago, many hundreds of years ago. And so multiple marriages were not common. Now we have lots of choices, and now we have lots of different expectations. And what happens in life is that we go through different stages of living, that we have the experience that who we are when we're 20 is so different than who we are when we're 40. It's so different than who we are when we're 60. And we have these different flavors of moving in our life that are inevitable. And that creates a lot of pressure on a marriage.
Yeah, so the challenge is to be true to yourself and grow yourself over a lifetime and respect your journey and develop yourself, and at the same time be open and honest and truthful about these changes with a partner who may be changing on a different timetable. It's important that we be sharing about what's changing, what we want and what we don't want, how things look different to us as a result of how life presents itself to us. So when for a lot of women, it depends on whether you get married and have children first or you have a career first. But if you have children first and then you evolve into getting settled into your own purpose in life beyond family and want to contribute in a different creative capacity, your life may go in a more independent direction as your children get older. And this creates a huge gap that we've been experiencing as a culture for the last, I think, 30 years, where divorces are very possible because the challenge is great to bridge the gap between being domestically oriented and being work oriented. And so a lot of couples have had a hard time negotiating through that transition. And what I want to say is that a lot of couples don't make it through that transition. And so that leads to having serial marriages to a different person. Some of us are able to transition through that time and stay self-expressed and clear about what's similar and different about these changes and what you want and what you don't want, and be able to facilitate the kind of coordinated responsiveness between partners that keeps each partner growing. As one partner wants something new and they make open-hearted requests of the partner to move in a direction that supports them, a marriage can make that transition. And you could have multiple marriages with the same person.
So let's share some personal stories of what our own experience of marriage is. So we've been married for 49 years, Dr. Barbara and I. And one of those transition situations comes to my mind as we're sharing. So I'm like 30 years old, and we go back to visit my parents who lived back in New York, and we go to visit them. And Barbara asked me to talk to my mom, who's very intense and controlling. And my mom wanted Barbara and I to spend time with her when we visited, because she and my father didn't come to California very often at all for various reasons, but Barbara's parents did. And so my mother wanted us to spend more time with her and not to see Barbara's parents. Barbara asked me nicely to please tell my mother that we were going to visit her parents when we're in New York, and we're not going to just only stay with my parents. And I talked to I told Barbara, okay, I'll talk to my mom. And I thought it would just be a pretty, simple discussion of, that's what we're going to do. And I got into this big, long discussion with my mom. And my mom said, absolutely not. She refuses to allow me to go and visit her parents. It's not right. It's not fair. I should just stay with them. And she had all these reasons, and she wouldn't agree that it was okay for Barbara and I, and we were married, we were adults, to go and visit her parents who lived in New York also.
You had 2 children at the time.
Yeah. And it was like a half an hour of wrestling with my mom to just get her permission that it was okay for us to go there. She said, no, absolutely not. And we went on and on and on about this. And I had never really confronted my mother before like this. I'm pretty easygoing with my mom, and I wouldn't fight and argue with her. And this time I wasn't arguing with her. I just wasn't agreeing with her. I was being very nice about it. But ultimately I said, no, I'm not agreeing with you. And she just wouldn't move from her position, and she just would, and so at the end of that long discussion and on and on and on, and it was clear that the discussion was going nowhere. And I said, okay, I want to give you a hug, and then I'm going to go. And she says, why do you want to give me a hug? I said, because I love you, and I want to give you a hug. I said, well, and she said, I don't want a hug. And I said, but I want to give you a hug. And then we got into a big argument about giving her a hug. And we went on and on about that argument. I wanted to give her a hug. She didn't want a hug. Finally, she reluctantly says, okay, hug me already. And so I gave her a hug, and then we both cried. And that for me was like a big transition point, where Barbara had pushed me to do something that didn't come natural to me. And I stood up to my mother's desires, and Barbara and I had our own desires, and it changed my relationship with my mom. It never was quite the same afterwards. She treated me with a lot more respect, and she understood that I am a a different person who's there with my wife, and we are on a little different level of being. I wasn't just a kid anymore. And so that was a big change. And it came from Barbara pushing me to do something that didn't come natural to me, but it had me grow and develop.
So do you mean pushing? Because I remember it was really a request.
Yes.
I felt for my mom, and what we wanted to do was just go and have dinner with my parents. It's not like we wanted to, it wasn't a dramatic thing where we were going to stay with my parents, but just the simple request is really what you're talking about.
Right. And but it was still,
It moved mountains. That's for sure.
It didn't come from me. Okay.
That's right. And that's the beauty of relationship, that you can help each other grow by being honest about what you want from your partner. It doesn't need to be a battle or a big crisis, but the natural evolution of what you want and being open and honest about it can impact yourself, and it can impact your partner in ways that evolve you over time. And actually, I can discern at least 3 different marriages we've had together. I mean, we're the same bodies, obviously, but we have not been the same people. Of course, our personalities are basically the same, but our life organization has changed, pretty dramatically over time. And it's a pleasure. It never gets old. It's always wonderful. I completely enjoy you, and I value our friendship as well as our ongoing love affair, but it's different.
Yes, it is different. So in the beginning of our marriage, I was intellectually very stiff and rigid. I knew the right thing, and I knew the way it should be done. And I pretty much knew everything. I was really a know-it-all. And that's what happens when you go to medical school. It's a side effect. And living in that place for a period of time, it created all this peculiar pulling when Barbara wants me to grow and develop in different ways, and it presses me to grow. And so I really changed quite a bit. And so that the other memory that comes up.
Could I interface with that description?
Yeah.
Because I remember those years. I love Michael for lots of reasons. And then after a while, with all the love I feel for him, he was frankly boring. He was annoying, and it felt, confining. And I decided that I couldn't be constrained by the limitations of a relationship, that I needed to, while I had children, I needed to figure something else out for myself. And I went back to school, and I started working at St. Joseph Hospital. I had, all kinds of growth experiences that moved me along. And, I looked back at my marriage, and I realized it needed some work, and that, I essentially loved Michael with all my heart, but the relationship was really confining. And thankfully, you responded well, and you were open to stretching your personality.
Yeah, Barbara was quite a pressure to grow in this emotional way, not to be so in your intellect, but to be present to your emotions. And she didn't really drag me. She encouraged me to go on all these courses and classes that I never would have gone on my own, because I knew everything already. Why did I have to go on these courses and classes? But she wanted me to go on these emotionally development classes of various sorts, and you learn to feel your feelings and express your feelings and go through different experiences. And one of the experiences that I went through, which is really a profound experience, was to look at your emotional racket for why your life doesn't work. And we all have that. We all have a little racket we run that if only this and this, then my life would be really good. But it's not, so I'm struggling with it. So my personal racket was that I didn't really feel like I was good enough, because my mother, when I was young, she didn't really do all those things that makes me feel really loving, and she didn't cuddle me and tell me how wonderful I was. It was always like, oh, all right, you could do better. It's nice you did so well, but I expect that of you. I never got the feeling that I was so special. That wasn't my mother. And so I would complain about that. I complained to women in my life who were never feeling I was good enough. My mother didn't feel I was good enough, and my wife didn't feel I was good enough. So I had this complaint, and it was fulfilled in reality. And so then she takes me on this kind of a course or class that says everybody has a complaint about life that explains why their life is not great. And I sure had a complaint. And the thought process of this class was that everybody has to give up their complaint because it's just a complaint and we all have them and it just runs your life. And until you accept the fact that it's just a complaint and until you allow yourself to give it up, you're just going to have a big complaint about everything. So eventually I argued and all this and all this, and eventually I realized that, I do have to just give up this complaint. And the peculiar thing was that when you give up the complaint, I would have to act as if I didn't have the complaint. So instead of calling my mother on the phone and she says, you haven't called in 2 weeks, what's the matter? Why aren't you calling me? I had to just start calling my mother as if I really enjoyed calling her, that I wasn't feeling like she wasn't nurturing me, that I had to act as if it was happening and I had to stop complaining about it. And I called her regularly and I sent her cards and flowers and I did all these things for her because instead of complaining about that she's not saying how great I am, I just went ahead and did it. And the peculiar thing is that over time, she really began to feel like I was a great son. I would call her and send her all these flowers and cards and do things. And she loved it. And she never talked more than 5 minutes because that's all she needed. And it worked. And it changed my relationship to Barbara because I stopped complaining about her not telling me how great I was all the time. And it changed the way I interacted with Barbara, where I could do things that made her happy because I wasn't complaining about everything. And so this is an odd thing of how you can change yourself. You can deal with your own inner qualities of complaining and let go of it. We all can do it. And it's a process. It doesn't happen in a day, but intellectually, once you make the process, then everything begins to change around you. And now Barbara, for some strange reason, thinks I walk on water. It's really peculiar. But that's the way this peculiar thing works.
It's a remarkable story because you really did change. You became emotionally connected, you had vitality, you were engaged and fun. And, I hear you retell the story, it strikes me that your resentment about your mom kept you from being emotionally present. And you were doing all the right things prior to that, but here you started to just give as sort of an experiment, and it, what surprised I think both of us is that your heart became present in your life. You became a loving man. You were always a wonderful man, a good person, and there's a sweetness about you, but you really became emotionally generous. And I fell in love with you all over again, and so that started a whole new marriage we had, where we were, more emotionally connected, not just intellectually connected. And so, that's an example of how we have the same bodies, essentially the same personalities, but a whole different dynamic, a whole different way of doing relationship.
Yes. And so that's what we want to encourage all of you listening, is to recognize that you both can change and you as a marriage can support each other to change and grow, not by being demanding and irritating, but just by making requests and telling them what makes you happy and what would really be nice. And that's what we teach in our relationship class. We call it Falling in Love Forever. It is a class that involves 4 2-hour sessions where we teach you skills that allow you to grow through these inevitable changes in life. And these skills involve making requests, involve sharing with each other without arguing, involve understanding each other's past, dealing with anger, that if anger comes up, what it is and how to deal with it. And these are skills that are lifelong skills that allowed you to use marriage relationship to move you through life and to grow and develop into the human being that you'd like to be, and to feel a godly presence in your life, which comes through the marriage, which comes through your love, through your partner. And so we want to encourage you to do that. And if you're interested, you can go to our website, ocwellness.com, look for the courses and classes, and you can sign up for these courses and classes, and you'll see some things on the internet that will allow you to sign up for them.
Is that the website people go to? It's
No, actually, they probably should go to
the marriage map.
themarriagemap.com would be the better website. Thank you very much, my dear. themarriagemap.com. Anything else you'd like to say?
No, but it's a wonderful adventure, and Michael's story started from just an honest request that came out of my realization that my parents were, wanted our attention, and I wanted to give them our attention. Simple thing. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't an argument. It was just a simple request. Started a huge development in Michael's life and our life together.
Well, thank you all for listening. We look forward to seeing you again in the next couple of weeks. Thanks so much.
Wishing you love.
Thank you for watching the Falling in Love Forever show with Doctors Barbara and Michael Grossman. Join us next week for another informative discussion to help you keep your love alive. Be sure to visit us at themarriagemap.com or find out about our relationship classes at fallinginloveforever.com.